Good afternoon and welcome to ESSSuper's annual members meeting for the 2023-2024 financial year. My name is Christian Kung and I'm the Manager of Member Education. It's my pleasure to be your MC today. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners on the land on which we meet, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples attending today. Thank you to everyone joining us online and in person. It's fantastic to have around 260 members with us today. We really appreciate this opportunity to connect, update you on the fund, and most importantly, answer your questions. ESSSuper Board members, our executive team and our actuary are also present this afternoon. We'll hear from three speakers today. We have Joan Fitzpatrick, the Board President, Robbie Campo, our Chief Executive Officer, and Daniel Salutin, our Group Executive of Investments. The presentations will be followed by a Q&A session. I'd now like to introduce our Board President, Joan Fitzpatrick. Joan was appointed President of the ESSSuper Board on the 8th of February 2016. She's an accomplished company director and successful business leader with over 40 years' experience in the corporate, government and non-for-profit sectors. She has an impressive track record of achieving strong engagement and successful business outcomes in complex change environments. Joan is the chair of the Catholic Church Insurance, of the Hardman Group and of RAF Hargrave, and is a non-executive director of the AFL Players Injury and Hardship Fund and the Defence Bank. In addition, she runs her private consulting firm, Alvierium Proprietary Limited, and provides pro bono consulting to various charities and causes. She has a particular focus on mentoring women and championing women's equality in society. Joan is a qualified barrister and a fellow of both the Australian Institute of Company Directors and the Australian and New Zealand Institute of Insurance and Finance. She's a member of the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, Customer Road Banking Association and Women in Super. Welcome, Joan.
Thanks very much, Christian. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of those lands on which we all live, work and gather throughout Australia, and their connections to land, waterways and community. For us here in Melbourne, we acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. We honour their stewardship and their continuing deep spiritual relationship to country. We commit ourselves to the ongoing journey of reconciliation and the cultural safety of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people. On behalf of the Board of Directors, most of whom are here this afternoon, I think we've got almost a full house, and I think the directors who can't attend in person are online. I'd really like to extend a very warm welcome to all ESSSuper members attending our annual members meeting online or in person. A big welcome to everyone. It's important to note, I think, that the Board of Directors has 5 out of the 10 directors elected by members, elected by people like you, and 5 are nominated by the government. And this means that that group combines to bring a very deep understanding of our members, as well as considerable expertise in a broad range of commercial and business disciplines. As a result, the board is very well placed to provide good governance and oversight of all ESSSuper's activities and strategic guidance and provides the strategic guidance and support to management. ESSSuper was created amazingly almost 100 years ago in recognition of the people who safeguard the security, health and well-being of Victorians. So I think we're one of the oldest continuous superannuation funds in the country. Because we exist to help those who serve our community achieve the comfortable retirement they deserve, we're actually quite different from other superannuation funds in very important ways. We're an agency of the Victorian Government. We're governed by the Emergency Services and State Superannuation Act, which mandates that we operate in the best interests of all of our members. We embrace this purpose wholeheartedly. It defines our culture and guides every decision that we make. We're proud to have a profit-to-member ethos, meaning we operate for the benefit of all of our members and not for shareholders. We only charge the fees required to cover the costs of administering the fund and managing investments, and we only spend money on what's important to members. We're not a public offer scheme. Membership is exclusive to specific groups of people, including police officers, firefighters, paramedics, teachers, and support workers. Most of our members have access to our unique defined benefit schemes. ESSSuper's defined benefit entitlements are built into members' employment conditions and are protected from the ups and downs of investment performance. This means our members have financial certainty, and they typically retire with higher retirement savings than the average Australian. ESSSuper is large enough to deliver strong financial outcomes, but small enough to maintain close, meaningful relationships with the communities we serve. We visit members' workplaces and talk to them and their representatives to understand the challenges that they face. We work closely with employers, unions, and the Victorian Government to better meet our members' needs. I'd like to share with you just a few brief comments on some of the achievements we achieved last financial year. For members who have retirement savings in an ESSSuper accumulation plan, beneficiary account, or income stream account, I'm pleased to report that our investment performance has once again been exceptionally positive, both in absolute terms and relative to other funds. While it can be tempting to focus on short-term performance, please keep in mind that superannuation is about the long term. We have a highly capable investments team at ESSSuper, and performance has been very, very strong over the past several years. Our Group Executive of Investments, Daniel Salutin, will talk more about this later. Suffice to say, we're delighted to be delivering such great results for our members. ESSSuper's products and services are also performing very well. In 2023, Super Ratings rated our accumulation plan and income streams as platinum, that is, in the top 25% of funds, for the 15th and 16th years in a row. And in May of this year, global industry research firm, an independent research firm called Investment Trends, once again named us one of the top 3 funds for member satisfaction. This recognition is a testament to the ESSSuper team's deep commitment to delivering high-quality outcomes for our members. And I'd like to thank Robbie Campo, our CEO, her executive team, and all of the staff at ESSSuper for their professionalism and focus during this year. I'd also like to express my gratitude to the government, employers, and unions for their ongoing support. Looking forward, the board has approved an ambitious new 5-year strategy developed by management after extensive research and consultation with directors, members, and key stakeholders. It outlines how we'll achieve 4 strategic priorities. Number 1, provide expert service, support, and advice that empowers members to navigate a confident retirement journey. Number 2, deliver great member experiences actually tailored to our members' needs. Number 3, ensure we have contemporary, fit-for-purpose capabilities, platforms, and systems that make superannuation and retirement easier for members and for our people. And number 4, continue to be a successful and trusted hybrid defined benefit and accumulation fund. We're confident this 5-year strategy will set the fund up for a successful future. As I said earlier, as always, members' best interests will be at the forefront of everything we do. Before I hand back to Christian, I'd like to say one more very important thank you. And that's to you, our members, for the trust you place in ESSSuper. Being the custodian of your retirement savings is a privilege and a responsibility we take very, very seriously. We're incredibly proud to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joan. Our next speaker is the Chief Executive Officer of ESSSuper, Robbie Campo. Robbie joined ESSSuper as Chief Executive in July 2022. She has worked as an executive in the superannuation industry for over 2.5 decades and has extensive experience in executive leadership, strategy, risk management, financial management, transformation and public policy. Robbie is deeply committed to the fundamental purpose of superannuation, to maximise the retirement outcomes of Australians and ensure that the hard-earned contributions made throughout their working lives create financial security for them in their post-working years. A key priority for her is to see systemic improvement in women's retirement outcomes. She holds a law degree with honours, a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Education, and a graduate diploma in Applied Finance and Investment. Robbie is also a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Welcome, Robbie.
Thank you, Christian. I'd also like to welcome everyone joining us this afternoon online and in person. It's lovely to be back at the RSCV Club. For almost a century, ESSSuper and the funds before it have been proud to serve emergency services and state super members. We're driven by a strong sense of purpose to do everything in our power to ensure you enjoy the comfortable retirement that you deserve. I'd like to share some of the things that we did during the last financial year to further enhance the products and services that we offer to you. Member service will always be a priority for ESSSuper. We see the often unheralded support you provide to our communities and the day-to-day reality of your work, the long hours, the challenging situations, the significant emotional load. We work hard to provide the support and guidance you need when and where you need it. Whether you're working or retired, we're committed to helping you maximise the benefits of your unique fund. Last financial year, our Member Service Centre not only answered almost 80,000 calls, they also set up a case management team to support members who had more complex issues by taking end-to-end responsibility for resolving their issues. Established in February of this year, this group handled 172 cases in the first 5 months of operation and received overwhelmingly positive feedback from members. Our member education consultants completed more than 7,000 one-on-one appointments last financial year, providing information and general advice at no additional cost to members. They visited 203 workplaces across the state and ran 81 education events at our offices in regional Victoria and online. Our schemes are unique and very complex, with nuanced rules that can impact a member's entitlements. Our member advice team understands the intricacies of this fund and is ideally placed to provide expert guidance and personalised recommendations to members seeking to maximise their financial outcomes. On several occasions, our team has picked up details and identified opportunities missed by external advisors. Our advisors operate in members' best interests under the supervision of an independent licensee. They're not-for-profit and charge only the fees necessary to cover the costs of providing the advice service. If you're considering speaking to an external advisor, always ask them if they have experience with ESSSuper entitlements and compare their fees with those of our ESSSuper member advice team. Last financial year, our advisors delivered personalised recommendations to 333 members seeking to make informed financial decisions and set themselves up for retirement. In a 2024 survey of over 11,000 Australian superannuation members, and this is research conducted across the whole superannuation industry, research company Investment Trends found that ESSSuper members who had seen a financial advisor were more satisfied than any other group in the whole system. This finding is certainly reinforced by our own ongoing monitoring. ESSSuper members awarded our member advice team a satisfaction score of 91% last financial year. Recognising the demanding work our members do, we also have a dedicated claims and insurance administration team to help when members need to access their death and disability benefits. During the year, they assisted 432 members to successfully navigate the approval process and provided support during this difficult period. It's important for a fund like ESSSuper to recognise we don't always get everything right, and we've worked hard to ensure that we take the complaints that members make very seriously. We work to resolve our members' issues as quickly and effectively as possible. This is always a high priority for us. Beyond that, we carefully review complaints to identify any gaps in our processes and policies, making improvements where necessary. A recent case involved feedback on the State Employees Retirement Benefits Scheme rules. This fund's also often known as SERB, which is the acronym. A number of complaints we received highlighted that the resources we provide were insufficient. This has led us to create a tailored SERB scheme handbook, which will be released shortly. We also sometimes receive feedback that our identity verification processes can be challenging. While we aim to balance member experience with security, our priority has to be ensuring that we have strong controls in place to protect against identity theft. So I would just urge you to understand the rationale behind the hoops we put in place to make sure that we're dealing with our members when we have people contacting us, and especially when money is being accessed, to really make sure that it is the member and not a fraudster trying to access a member's account. As Joan mentioned, in the last financial year, Investment Trends once again ranked ESSSuper in the top 3 funds for member satisfaction. Our members awarded our frontline teams an average of 91% satisfaction rating. We're very proud of this. These fantastic results are a testament to our strong sense of purpose to do everything we can to ensure members achieve the best possible retirement outcomes. And I'm delighted to say that our members do typically retire with higher retirement savings balances than the average Australian. The Association of Super Funds of Australia regularly publishes the amount needed at the age of 67 to fund a comfortable standard of living in the post-work years. They define comfortable retirement as one that enables an older, healthy retiree to be involved in a broad range of leisure and recreational activities, to purchase things such as household goods, private health insurance, a reasonable car, good clothes, a range of electronic equipment, and domestic and occasionally international travel. The amount required at retirement to achieve this standard of living is $595,000 for a single person and $690,000 for a couple. We're pleased to say that around 75% of our active defined benefit members are on track to meet or exceed the Ask for Comfortable standard when they retire, well above the Australian average of 30%. And 63% of members with retirement income stream accounts met or exceeded this standard last financial year. So we're really proud to be delivering such great outcomes for our members. I've already touched on this, but further strengthening our cyber and data security in a global environment of heightened risk is another key focus for us. We've implemented a range of strategies and technical controls to continuously monitor our systems and reduce the likelihood and impact of a cybersecurity incident. We're committed to this ongoing investment in this area to ensure that your personal data and your retirement assets remain safe. In order to continue providing the member services we pride ourselves on in an environment of rising costs, we have had to increase our annual administration fee cap for income stream accounts from $750 to $1,000 per annum from the 1st of November 2024. We did undertake a reduction of our fee cap in July 2023. Prior to that, the cap had been at $2,120 and last year it was reduced to $750. Since then, unfortunately, we've experienced increases in the costs of providing essential administration, data governance and support services to members, necessitating this adjustment. We want to be really transparent about the basis for this decision, and we understand the impact and haven't taken it lightly. The fee cap increase is designed to ensure we can continue to provide the superior level of service and support that you expect while maintaining our commitment to keep overall fees competitive. And I would like to emphasise that even after this fee increase, our total fees are still very, very competitive. The table that has come up on the screen shows how ESSSuper's retirement income stream account fees compare with those of other super funds for a member in the balanced investment option. As you can see, even after the increase, our income stream account fees are still highly competitive compared with both the not-for-profit super fund median and the industry super median. The median across the whole super industry. Another point I'd like to touch on is an important aspect of who we are, our strong connection to the community we serve. Last year, we were inspired by members joining us to share their personal stories, participating in celebrations such as Thank a First Responders Day and International Teachers Day, and we paid our respects at the Victoria Police National Remembrance and Blue Ribbon Day. We took part in the Angela Taylor Memorial Walk, got involved with groups that support our members' health and wellbeing, and learned more about our members' lives at career expos, family days and graduations. Joan and I meet regularly with our government, employer and union partners, and I was lucky enough to attend a number of their conferences during the year. I'd like to thank our community for supporting us in these activities. We feel very privileged to belong. Looking forward, we have a number of exciting initiatives planned to further uplift our member service and support. These include delivering a new website that's easy to navigate and empowers users to find answers and complete tasks, enhancing our mobile app, producing high-quality content and communications tailored to members' specific circumstances, and reviewing the products we offer to ensure they meet members' needs at various life stages. We'll also continue to invest in platforms and systems, governance processes, and our people, the foundations of a high-performing superannuation fund. And I would like to acknowledge I have the whole executive team of ESSSuper here with us tonight. Thank you so much for attending our annual members meeting. The rest of the panel and I look forward to answering your questions shortly. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to introduce our final speaker of the day, our Group Executive of Investments, Daniel Salutin. Daniel joined ESSSuper in June 2018 and leads the organisation's investments function. He's held senior roles in asset allocation, investment strategy and asset consulting at several organisations. Prior to ESSSuper, he worked at leading institutional investment consultancy, Frontier Advisors, providing investment advice to Australian superannuation funds. Daniel is committed to helping people build wealth for their retirement. He holds a first-class honours degree in finance from the University of Melbourne and is a CFA charter holder. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Christian. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our annual members meeting. I'm delighted to speak to you this afternoon and provide an update on investment markets, as well as talking you through some of our investment returns. I wanted to begin with an important message, and I often start my presentations with these points, but they're quite pertinent to members here today. For our members in the defined benefit funds, your superannuation is determined by your employment conditions, which means that returns don't matter as much as the underlying rules governing your fund. This is something that our member education staff can assist you with today if you do have any questions about your benefits. For our members in the accumulation and retirement options, financial markets will have a bearing on your super, and that's why it's important to ensure that you pick an investment option that's right for you. That's notwithstanding that the default option is a good choice for many. I'll begin with a brief overview of financial markets. For those of you who were here with us last year, you may remember my fairly sombre assessment for growth investments in 2024. While that assessment remains the same 12 months later, I do have to say that our growth exposed investments have fared much better than many people, and certainly myself, expected this time last year. The chart you see on screen shows our asset class returns over the 1 year to September. You can see in the chart equities have generated around 20% over the year. It goes without saying that's an incredibly high return, and certainly in excess of what are our longer term expectations. So what's happened? Well, for starters, the US has remained remarkably resilient, much more resilient than many investors expected. US GDP has been very strong, driven by household spending, which many investors expected would abate after COVID savings were spent. The US labour market has remained remarkably resilient despite the high interest rate environment, and what makes the current set of circumstances particularly challenging is at the latter stages of an economic cycle, and that's where I think we are today. The economy can look quite benign before things abruptly change. So what we're doing is we're quite closely monitoring the US labour market for signs of weakness, and there are early signs of that. And we're cautious also that policymakers, so that's central banks in particular, have had a fairly poor historical record of being able to stamp out inflation without also stamping out economic growth. In Europe, growth is a bit more wobbly than it is in the US. Germany's economy has noticeably slowed, particularly in its energy-dependent manufacturing sector. Here in Australia, we're facing, as a number of you will likely be aware, high living costs, mortgage repayments impacting younger people and household spending. Inflation's gradually moved down, which is a good sign, but it remains persistent. And in Australia, we've got one of the higher inflation rates amongst advanced economies, 3.8% for a 12-month period to June 2024, which is quite high. Economic indicators, forward indicators such as consumer sentiment, business confidence, manufacturing surveys are negative in some countries, and monetary policy remains generally tight. Credit growth is weak. In the US, delinquencies on credit card loans are rising, but banks are also reducing or easing lending standards. And in Australia, we have seen mortgage arrears begin to rise, but they're not at critical levels at this stage. There's still a risk of an economic downturn if interest rates aren't able to stamp out inflation before the economy slows. But notwithstanding all of the scary challenges I've just described, it has to be said that inflation this year is in a much better place than it was last year. And certainly the chance of the US avoiding a recession, I think those chances have increased relative to last year. which is good. Some of you may recall me speaking about investment performance and the impact inflation has on performance. And to put it simply, when inflation is very high, it becomes very difficult to generate a return that keeps up with the rising cost of living. Many of you will be aware that most of our investment options have an objective which is a return target above inflation. And so when inflation is very high, the returns just need to be that much higher to keep pace with the targets that we set. You can see on screen we have the 3-year return, so that's 3-year annualised returns after fees, after taxes for our investment options, and they're compared against their inflation-linked return targets, again on that 3-year basis. You can see that the orange is the objectives. Inflation's been very high for the last 3 years. You've likely noticed that yourselves when you've gone to buy groceries or pay for food. In a longer term context, and I should point out that our investment options, a large number of them, and some of them even more so, have an investment horizon of 10 years. So some of the options have a 12-year investment horizon, and you can see on this next chart that performance has been above that inflation target. So on a 10-year annualised basis against 10-year inflation, so taking that longer term view and taking COVID out of the equation, you can see that the purple line's above the benchmark, which is where we want it to be. Relative to other superannuation funds, I'm very pleased to say that 7 of 9 of our accumulation plan options have delivered performance above the median over the 3-year period ending September 2024. The last 12 months have been particularly challenging from a peer relative perspective, but that's been deliberately so because we have intentionally moved the portfolio to a slightly more conservative risk setting as growth assets have become increasingly unattractive. When the economic environment stabilises in the coming months, we'll put those assets back to work and the peer relative performance will improve. But the high interest rate environment does increase the risk that we can run into a recession. So we certainly don't want to leave returns on the table, but we also don't want to be taking risks that may ultimately prove to be unrewarded. I'd like to conclude today by thanking you for trusting ESSSuper to take care of your retirement savings. I thank you again.
Well, that concludes the formal presentations. We do hope you found them informative. It's now time to hear from you in our question and answer session. So we've got a pre-submitted question here, which I might start with. So this was submitted by a member by the name of David. And David has asked, have there been any attempts by hackers to gain access to any ESSSuper accounts? Can I give that to you, Robbie?
Thank you, Christian. So unfortunately, the answer to that question is yes. We are operating in an environment of heightened cybersecurity risk. I mentioned this before when I made my opening comments, but we do take very seriously the need to ensure that we secure the systems that hold member data and protect them against malicious access by cyber criminals. Systems which hold member data are protected by periphery controls, which provide both proactive and reactive responses to malicious access attempts. Over the past year, these controls have identified and blocked hundreds of phishing attacks and hundreds of attempts at malicious access. I'm not trying to frighten you, and I certainly want to reassure you that the experience of ESSSuper is exactly the same as every other financial institution and certainly any organisation that's operating in the modern era. And I do attend many sessions and panels with peer CEOs of other funds, and certainly there are many conversations around, the threats that we are all collectively facing. However, we have every reason to feel confident that none of our controls have been breached. Management conducts regular simulations and audits and penetration tests to really ensure that we have a strong cybersecurity posture. And in instances where we identify any area where there's room for improvement, we do so very quickly, but we are very proactive. We did unfortunately have an instance during the year where a cyber criminal did get access to a member's account. What had occurred is that the member's identity, details of his identity had been stolen via another institution, and then that information was used by the cyber criminal to access the member's ESSSuper account. The member had been alerted by the other financial institution that their data had been breached, and so the member was alert to the risk and was proactive in engaging with us, and we were quick to identify and deal with that instance. It is, I guess, why we are so conservative in the settings we have in place in terms of accessing your account. We do, anytime a member is accessing money or changing details, requiring that reconfirmation of who you are through either an ID check or a two-factor authentication, depending on what you're doing. I would like to emphasise two-factor authentication is a very important layer of security for your personal information. In order for us to apply two-factor authentication to your account, it is important we have your mobile phone number, because that's often the second factor that we use to verify that it's you. I want to confirm we would never send you an email or an SMS asking for you to provide your personal information. There's a few more things I'll call out that you can do to help us in protecting your account. Be aware of phishing scams. So these are the emails that we all receive asking us to immediately provide details, otherwise something dire will happen. The fraudsters now, there are businesses set up to enable this kind of activity, and they're getting much better at looking like legitimate emails. So just really remain on guard in terms of being aware of the types of mechanisms and tricks that are used. And ESSSuper, and I think most other financial institutions, would never ask you to provide your details through that kind of proactive engagement. If in doubt, always phone us or the institution involved to check. Make sure you use strong, unique passwords. Make sure you're checking your account regularly. And I think also it's really important to limit the occasions where you're sharing your personal information, because it is when fraudsters and cybercriminals get access to the details, they can use that to try and pass ID processes. So we do take it very seriously, and so I think it's really important that we all remain on guard, and we'll continue to work as hard as we can on that front.
Thank you very much, Robbie. I'll now take a question from the floor.
Yes, I've just got a question about the fund option names and designations, which changed about a year ago. Was that changed because the performance of those funds didn't match the implied performance in the name, or is it that the fund options were out of step with the other industry partners under super funds, or is there another explanation?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a combination of all of those things. So I think the main driver of the renaming is to increase comparability with other products in the market. Certainly when the names were initially incepted, superannuation was less comparable, less easily comparable between funds in the industry. And as that demand from members to have a balanced option be also called a balanced option at another fund, as that became a regular query of ours, we went through the exercise of just making sure that they aligned in a manner that was consistent across the industry. There's a little bit of the question was, is there an industry standard? There isn't a regulatory standard in the sense that different super funds can have ultimately different names, what's happened is as peer surveys have become more prominent in the market, as the government's introduced various benchmarking tools, the names have all kind of coincided with one another. So there's a general consistency, although it's not perfect.
We've got a question from the online audience here. This is by a member by the name of Barry, and Barry's asked, there appears to be ways to record the details of reversionary beneficiaries and non-binding beneficiaries in Members Online. Is there such an online provision for the recording of the contact details of binding beneficiaries? Can I give that to you, Robbie?
Yes. So thank you, Barry, for that very important question. We would always encourage our members to think about ensuring that your beneficiary details are up to date and to consider whether a binding nomination is right for you. When you're a DB member, it's worthwhile understanding whether it is right for you. So it is possible to renew a binding nomination via Members Online before it expires, and we do send you reminders 30 and 14 days before they expire. I think they have to be renewed every 3 years. Yes. But in order to create or change a binding nomination, this must be done with a physical form that is witnessed. So that's a government requirement. That's not something that we can avoid. So the form is available to download in Members Online, but to make or change a nomination, not to renew, it does unfortunately have to be what's called a wet signature. So I hope that answers your question.
We've got another pre-submitted question. This one was anonymously submitted. It says, in past years, you've spoken about ongoing issues with your administration partner, and this year again, the fund has had to correct issues with my tax statement. What is ESSSuper doing to ensure that these mistakes are not ongoing? Can I get you to answer this one too, please, Robbie?
Look, it is a very important question. I think for the last couple of AMMs, we've had questions asked about the way in which the fund is administering and the issues that we've had since we outsourced to our administration company, Iris. So most super funds will have a technology provider who supports the way the fund is administered, and this includes providing the systems that allow us to manage payments, investments, provide the platform for members to view their account and for us to be able to access member accounts. So as at, I think, 3 and a bit years ago, that was outsourced to an ASX-listed company called Iris. It's true that we've had issues. Certainly, I'm very pleased to report that there has been some improvement and our core member transactions are working, but there have been a few ongoing issues, and the one that this member calls out is one that we have had to work on again this year, so we are very apologetic for that. But I just wanted to really emphasise it remains a very high priority for the board and for me as CEO to make sure that we're closely supervising all of the services that they provide to ensure that they're getting things right, and that remains a really high focus for us. So there has been some improvement, but we recognise that there have still been instances where members have been let down, and we apologise for that and can just reassure you that we put a lot of effort into working to prevent them recurring, but also dealing with them when they do occur.
I've got another question from the floor.
Just a segue to what you've just talked about. When will ESS expect to finalise superannuation balances reporting to the ATO for the year ending 30 June 2024?
I think most of
30 June 2024.
30 June 2024, the latest reporting to the ATO.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's your responsibility or Iris, or when is there a date that ESS sets every year that it needs to be done by? Because some of us haven't received those things on our MyGov accounts.
Yeah, so
Sorry, it's normally October, end of
Yes.
October. We have to do it by, yeah.
So there's a regulatory requirement for it to be done by the end of October. So, so this is the tax reporting rather than your benefit statement? Yes. So, and I think, I'm not sure if anyone can report on how that's tracking, but I think the regulatory requirement is for the end of October. Thank you.
We have another pre-submitted question. This is from a member by the name of Emma. Emma's asked, you hear a lot about super funds merging. Does ESSSuper have any plans to merge with another fund? Could I address that to you, please, Joan?
Thanks, Christian. Great question. The answer simply is no. We don't have any plans to merge with another super fund, and we actually don't really need to. It's not an issue for us. I know there's a lot of movement in the superannuation industry where, really small, tiny funds are merging and finding a safe haven with a larger fund. The reason for that is that we are really quite an exclusive fund. So you're all members of a very exclusive fund. We are owned by the Victorian state public sector sort of arena. That's where we sit, and so that makes us very unique. And our close alignment with the emergency services and the state employees is a very core strength. So it's like we have a bond. Our members aren't a mix from all over the country. There's a really strong bond in terms of who our members are. And because we are administering defined benefit schemes, we have a very, very different business model. We're one of the only remaining open defined benefit schemes in the country, and so again, we are quite unique in terms of how we operate our organisation. The other thing, probably one of the most important things to say around why we don't need to merge, is that we have a very healthy and sustainable future at the size and the shape we're in. So, there's no need for us to do it, and so the answer is no. We're not. No plans at all. Yeah.
Thank you, Joan. I'll open it to the floor. Any questions?
I looked for the last year's presentation on YouTube, and it wasn't there. The previous year, 22, was, and I saw one of you mentioned that the video of the last members meeting is on your website. I couldn't find that either. Can you confirm whether that's actually there or not?
Yes, it's definitely on the website. We can, if you're interested to see it, we can make sure we give you a link so you know exactly where to locate it. But we are really excited about our new website because a lot of work has been done by the team. We have had feedback for a while that it could be easier to navigate, and so by the end of the calendar year or early in 2025 we'll be launching that, and I'm told that it's a much more intuitive navigation that will make it much easier for members to find the information that they're seeking, including our annual member meetings.
Thank you. We'll go to another pre-submitted question. This was submitted by a member by the name of David. And David's asked, why can't members' accounts be locked to external parties in the same way that some bank accounts lock your accounts? This would ensure that hackers cannot access any member's ESSSuper account. Could I again ask you to address this, please, Robbie?
Yes, sure. So the functionality to lock a member's account is available to ESSSuper admin staff, and it is possible for us to enable that where we have an issue with an account or where we flag it or the member flags it as there being some suspicious activity on the account. I would certainly say if there's an issue and you have any concerns, you should contact us immediately, either by phone or by email. It is important to note that unlike banks, with superannuation, it is much more limited the ways in which members' accounts can be accessed, and that's really ultimately what cyber criminals are after, is access to your money. So again, I'll just re-emphasise the importance of the protections that we put in place, and we ensure that members' account details can't be changed, and certainly that includes your contact details, your bank account details, without going through that identity process, and again emphasising the importance of two-factor authentication as a critical protection against cyber and identity criminals. So we will consider that functionality of locking, but I have to say to date we haven't had, based on our understanding of what members need and what protections are important, that is a control that is one that's available to members. Certainly our staff can do it at any point. But we'll take that feedback on board. Thank you.
A question from the floor?
Do you have any data analysis on member balances by, dollar terms?
Yes, so the members' question is, do we have data about members' balances? So it is something that the fund and the board looks at regularly in terms of really looking at and understanding how members are tracking. And, we have clear objectives that we set for ourselves in terms of seeing improvements in members' accounts and tracking the number of members who are looking like they're on track to have a comfortable retirement. And then, so that's something that we do look at quite regularly. And certainly there are specific targets that the board sees at various points through the year. I wasn't sure whether there was another aspect that you were curious about.
My question was, it just basically like on a graph analysis of, the numbers, total numbers of members, how many, in what sort of band, if you like, just for,
Of interest.
Yeah,
Yes.
review, yeah.
So we don't have one this evening. We had the information that we shared about, which is work we have been doing in terms of the number of members who sit at that comfortable level. So, we can tell you that ESSSuper members, due to the defined benefit design that most of our members have in their working life or, benefit from in their retirement, means typically they're retiring with a lot more than the average retiree in Australia. But we'll take that on board. Maybe next year that would be a useful thing for us to present, is to show you against the averages how you sit. It is information that when I'm doing presentations at conferences for members, I often present that because I think it's really important for us that we play back to our members, their relative situation, and I think that's important in terms of you being able to better enjoy the hard work that has been put into your super by members through your contributions, by your employer, which has typically been a state government entity, and by the fund's investment team in terms of generating the best returns on your account. So we'll take that as some feedback for next year and we can present that.
Thank you. I've got a question from the online audience by a gentleman by the name of Victor. He's asked, can you please go through the super returns again over the past 3 years? It was a bit fast during the presentation. So I might direct that to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Victor, for the question. And I'll preface my summary by re-emphasising Robbie's point earlier about the new website. I think some of the work that our team is doing in that space will add a great amount of clarity to things like investment performance, which is fairly limited in how we currently describe it on our website. There's really two ways that we look at investment performance, or at least the way that we present investment performance to our members. One is relative to inflation objectives. So over the last 3 years, when you may recall inflation in Australia got upwards of kind of 8% and higher in some years, relative to inflation objectives over the last 3 years to 30 September 2024, the only option that outperformed their CPI target was the cash option. And that's because of how unusual the environment is, and that's why we've got investment objectives which have a longer time horizon than that. Importantly though, relative to peers, which is sort of your next best alternative, the numbers are very, very strong. So we've got 7 of 9 of the investment options in the 3 years to September generating performance in the top quartile, which is the top 25% of super ratings peer funds. So notwithstanding that we haven't been able to deliver against CPI objectives over that shorter term horizon, relative to other funds in the market, we've done a very good job of generating a strong return for our members.
Thank you, Daniel. We'll go for another question from the floor, please.
Thanks. Mine's just a little bit more on the data security. I just want to feel a little bit more confident. So you mentioned there's been a lot of intrusions, I guess, or attempts into the data systems. And so to that end, do you have an internal area that looks after your system security, or do you outsource, or a bit of both in relation to that?
Let me assure you that what we are experiencing is being experienced by every organisation. And so what I was referring to as attempts, we have a team, an internal team. This is not a function that we outsource. Certainly we rely on the expertise of external parties, but the team who are responsible for our security is an in-house team. They're a very capable and competent team. I would say that we probably sit at the conservative end, but we think that's appropriate. When we look at our members, we feel that that's really important. We also, as part of the Victorian Government, have the benefit of the expertise of the government-led programs to keep all of the state government assets safe. So we certainly benefit from getting that expertise and support, which, helps us be a leading organisation in this space. But I just want to assure you we absolutely have a very capable in-house team who are vigilant and make sure that they're working hard, and that we do that regular activity of testing. And we do bring external parties in to help us with that testing process and making sure that we're being proactive in looking for any potential weakness, because this is a constantly evolving environment. So I hope that provides you with assurance. Yes.
Yeah, good. And I think it's worth adding that cybersecurity is a matter for the board. The board has reporting about our cybersecurity systems, about the attempts to hack through, et cetera, at every board meeting. It's regarded as one of our key risks, and in our risk and compliance environment, there's a huge amount of effort and focus on it. So we don't see it as anything that can be left alone. It has a lot of focus, a lot of effort. And as Robbie said, every single financial institution in Australia, all around the world, is facing the same sort of risk. So it's pretty awful, but we're doing everything we can.
And I will just replay, because the member didn't have the mic, but she did just respond to say it's really good you've got an internal team, but you do bring external people in to help test, and that does reflect best practice, that you're not marking your own exam papers for the former teachers in the room. We do bring different people in to come in and, test our systems and make sure that we're being very proactive about understanding, that what we think is secure is absolutely secure.
Perfect, thank you. We've got another online question. This is from a member by the name of Carol. She's asked, I have a small amount in an accumulation plan account. Can I transfer it into my pension account?
Yes, I think.
Yeah, I'll address this. It really depends on the pension account. If it's a lifetime pension, then there wouldn't be any way to add it to that. But if it is an income stream, whether it's a working income stream or retirement income stream, you won't be able to add it to that directly, but you could move the income stream back to the accum plan and then start a new pension product with that and combine those funds. So the one thing I would suggest, it's probably worthwhile just having a chat with us to find out whether it's suitable for you, and maybe even going through to the education team or through to the advice team if appropriate. But yeah, a quick call and we'll be able to give the information that you need. All right, I've got another one online that I can go to. Gentleman, Ruckmel, I believe it is, has asked the following question. In comparison of lump sum account and income stream account, which provides a better performance?
This one I think I may need some assistance with answering. Certainly.
I think I might add we can answer in general terms, but Ruckmel might be also a candidate for a member education appointment.
Certainly the income stream account is something we manage internally. It's managed with reference to peers as well as its investment objectives. It's designed to be highly comparable with other products on the market. The lump sum account is a a unique feature of just this fund. It's not directly comparable. It's not managed internally. I may hand over to someone else to explain.
It's managed as part of the defined benefit pool of assets. So it's really a default setting for members who haven't elected what to do once they've reached the point of retirement. But I'd probably encourage beyond that it might be worthwhile speaking to a member of the education team. Unless you had anything to add, Christian?
Oh, look, definitely speak to the education consultants, but just to outline, it's probably apples and oranges there. They're not really comparable. One's got security, and one is in the sense that you can't get negative returns, etc., whereas another one has the ability for flexibility. So it's sort of that trade-off, flexibility versus security. So again, have a chat with the team. We'll be able to walk you through historic performance and how they do actually differ, because they're not really comparable. To the floor again, anyone in the room have a question?
Being with the Environment Department, can you just talk about you read a lot about funds getting into, ethical investing, whether it's environment, climate change, politics, whatever. Can you just give me a sort of an overview of where you're at in the ethical investing space for our money?
I'll preface it with a little bit of background, because I think it's important to go over some of this detail. Our investment strategy is guided by 5 investment principles. One of those principles is sustainability, which talks to the environment question you've just asked. And what that means is every year when we consider new investments, when we review our existing investments, when we consider divestments from the portfolio, each of those considerations is made with reference to those 5 principles, one of which is always sustainability. On the environment side, our board has recently, in the last year or two, adopted a net zero carbon emissions objective for the accumulation plan. So we're targeting net zero by 2050. And that's because we believe that climate risks are a financial risk that needs to be managed, and that's certainly a position that's held by the financial regulator in Australia. Certainly in the 6 or 7 years that I've been with the fund, a great deal of effort in what we call the ESG space, or the environment, social governance space. A great amount of time has been focused on the environment side of things, and certainly in my time here. We do also have another option which may be of interest to some members. It's the ethical diversified option. So our existing suite of options has that climate kind of overlay, the net zero. The ethical diversified option will have that overlay, but it will also go deeper into non-financial considerations. So it has certain other exclusions which may be appropriate. It is a different strategy, so you'll often see that the performance will vary from that relative to the other option, but it's certainly one that's there. The other point I'd add is we've been a signatory as a fund to the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment for some time, and that's really guided our approach in this space over a number of years. And certainly the federal government's introduction of some mandatory reporting standards in this matter is kind of the near-term focus for us in the next coming couple of years.
Excellent, thank you. We have another pre-submitted question, person by the name of Sam. So is ESSSuper in the top 10 superannuation funds in Australia? Can I give that to you, please, Joan?
Thanks very much, Christian. That's a good question. I think we probably need to contextualise it a bit, because we're not comparing apples with apples when we compare ESSSuper to public offer funds, and I think I sort of touched on that in my opening remarks. But importantly, even though we're not in the top 10 by size, we're in the top performing funds. We're one of the top performing funds on the things that really matter. And the things that really matter have been described throughout the presentations today. So the retirement outcomes, 75% of our active defined benefit members are on track to meet or exceed that ASFA standard of, comfortable retirement. That's the Australian average across the country is 30%. So, you know, that's a really, really big indicator to you about how well and how importantly we hit that target of 75%. And we're not resting on our laurels. 75%, it would be great to get it even higher. The investment returns, as Daniel has told us, that investment options performance is really strong in absolute terms and compared to our equivalent competitor products. So to your earlier question, the gentleman in the front, you know, about the nomenclature used to describe those different fund streams. So when we compare our equivalents around that, we've got very, very strong returns. And, you know, that sort of top 25% of peer funds is really, really important. And then in terms of service, despite the fact we've had those hiccups with the IRIS administration, I think it's very fair to say, because all the external independent reviewers assess us as, you know, having a 91% satisfaction rating from our members in terms of the service that we give. You know, and I can say to you, sort of sitting at the board table, we're monitoring lots and lots of service metrics for Robbie and her team, for all of the staff in the organisation, and there's an absolute real passion in that staff membership group to get this right, to make sure that the service is really, really brilliantly delivered. And, you know, we win awards every year, and that's another independent assessment of our performance. So even though we're not in the top 10 of the largest super funds, I would say to you we're in the top of all super funds in Australia.
Thank you, Joan. If I could open up to the floor, any further questions?
Just a follow-up to my colleague's earlier question. Daniel, you mentioned that the accumulation fund is going net zero. Can you expand on exactly what that means? Are you only going to invest in companies through that fund that have got a commitment to net zero, and is that net zero through buying carbon offsets, or is it something more substantial, genuine?
Thank you for the question. I think the answer to that is it's a multifaceted process to get to net zero, which is why we haven't set an objective that's net zero immediately, because frankly that's a very difficult thing to implement in practice without it costing members a financial return in the short term. I think where we'll get to over time is we will see a combination of regulation, company engagement, as well as super fund and member activism that'll get us to hopefully as close as we can to net zero earlier than 2050, but it's something that we see in motion. We are a part of a group called ACSI, which is a collective body of Australian superannuation funds, and they do a terrific effort. ACSI, Australian
Council of Superannuation Investors.
Australian Council of, yep, apologies for the acronyms. They're everyday features for myself, but not necessarily for everyone. But they do a terrific job of actually engaging with companies on superannuation funds' behalf, and it's currently the process isn't about divestment, but it is about engaging and making sure that the companies are working towards and have in place their own climate plan. I think at some stage in the not too distant future we will need to consider divestment in certain cases. And there are various ways that you can implement that through the portfolio. But I think step one for us will be the reporting side. So it'll be about providing transparency to members so that you can see sort of where we're at. And we've done that with the board for the last, I'd say, year and a half to 2 years. But it's an ongoing piece of work that will take some time for us to achieve.
Would you be divesting based on scope 1, 2 or 3 emissions, scope 3 being the indirect emissions, like a fossil fuel company would count its customers' use of their product? Yeah. If you do that, you won't be investing in any fossil fuel company at all. And perhaps you could create an accumulation fund that still invests in that sort of stuff if members want it.
Thank you for that. So Scope 3 is definitely the objective that as a society I think we need to hit at some stage. Currently the 2050 objective that we've agreed is a Scope 1 and Scope 2 objective. We are working through a series of updates to our responsible investment policy, which we should have published this year, but that will really provide the sort of clarity that you're seeking with regards to this issue. The data is, and I've worked on this personally for a number of years, the data is a challenge, and it'll take some time to work through, and certainly I think the Australian government's adoption of that standard I referenced earlier will help. It will take some time to implement because we're Australian based, but a lot of our portfolios are international, and it's an Australian standard, so we sort of have to work with groups like ACSI to make sure it's pushed through the broader financial services ecosystem.
When you say that's an Australian standard, is that merely an adoption of the ISSB standard, the International Sustainability Standards Board, which is an international thing?
Thank you. It's got certain tweaks to it that make it a little bit different to that global standard.
Australian conditions, yeah. Yeah.
That will be very important because it will create a much more reliable and standardised data set for funds like us and other investors to be able to accurately understand and be supplied with the information that we need in order to be making the judgments we need to make to give effect to the strategy that Daniel's spoken about. I would just emphasise, you know, we do really look at this, and certainly, as Daniel mentioned, even the federal regulator in this space has required that funds pay attention to this risk because it is material, and over time it will, if it's not managed, end up costing members money. I mean, there are many people and there's a diversity of views on this, but certainly it's not one which is financially immaterial. It's financially material, and the board was very careful in their consideration of the adoption of the target. Most of our investment is through fund managers, and it's through our engagement with them. So Daniel mentioned divestment. It's certainly not the first thing that we would do. It's really about engaging and making sure that we're working with our managers who are working then with the companies that they invest in to get the right outcome from a return point of view, but also from a net zero point of view.
But also very important to emphasise that we're not giving up on any of the other objectives. So the peer relative objectives, the CPI, inflation plus objectives, they're all remaining the same. So we're not doing this to compromise return.
What's the ratio, just following from that question, what's the ratio of defined benefits as opposed to accumulation funds in ESSSuper? And I would say you could include the income stream accounts as well with the accumulation.
It's about 3/4 defined benefit and 1/4 accumulation.
Okay. Okay.
Hello. I'm wondering what role artificial intelligence is playing inside the organisation. We're a data-driven industry based on investments, also based on members' data. What role is artificial intelligence playing in relation to moving to that medium or not inside ESSS?
You comfortable if I take that? So I think that we are examining what role artificial intelligence might play. I think it's important that we're certainly incredibly cautious about and would not be enabling any of our staff to be using, especially open source AI tools, because there's no guarantee about the safety of those environments, especially where it involves confidential information or member data. But we are looking at the use cases where it might, with the right controls in place, be able to enhance what we do. So I think that we're still really at the stage of looking at it. Certainly not closed to how it might be used, but it would be probably not open source. It'd be within a closed environment and for very particular use cases.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the board is also looking at it very closely, and you know, it's yet another evolving environment that is really fast paced. So you know, it's going fast along and emerging and evolving. And our view is a very conservative view. Manage our exposure, and data protection is the key, but also let's not lose the opportunity, as Robbie said, to maybe reap some really great efficiencies and some benefits. And Dan, did you want to say something as well?
Yes, sorry. So the member also asked about investments. So hot off the press last week, I did have a conversation with our technology expert about how we may sandbox some of the use cases in investments. We don't deal with member data directly, so we are a little bit of a safer guinea pig to troll some of the benefits of AI. We can see certain efficiencies that are possible. So at the moment, for example, when we meet with fund managers or any other external organisation, someone has to write a meeting note. Well, AI can actually record the meeting and transcribe it for you, and then put it into a format that's actually pretty good and ready to go. So that certainly yields efficiency benefits, and it will, if done correctly, it may enable our team to be focusing on stuff that adds value.
Maybe I'll have a question to finish, which is just to say if there are any suggestions any of you have, and we've had a couple during the course of the meeting, but we will send you a survey. So if you do have any suggestions about what we can do to make this more meaningful or instructive for you, then we'd really love to hear your feedback. It's not really a question. I cheated.
Yeah, that's it. Still works. Thank you. Well, that's all we have time for today. I'd like to sincerely thank you all for attending this annual members meeting. We really appreciate you taking the time to engage with us and obviously share your views. I speak for all of us here at ESSSuper when I say we feel privileged to serve you, and are committed to doing everything we can to help you achieve the best possible retirement outcomes. I do hope we've given you a sense of that this afternoon. Goodbye for now.